Hi, it's Hella from Dawn Emporium, and well, today I'm making a sort of, but not, Italian base, that would be the best way to put it, sauce to go with pasta, to go in your slow cooker so you can have it cooking while you're like at work or busy or whatever. I'm not going to put the pasta in it because strangely enough it's not going to be cooked, and I'm going to forget by the time tea comes round that I need to do it on here. So I'm going to make it for you while telling you another story. Last time in my first video, sort of did a queen that is known for bringing about the end of the world. Sorry that my eyes keep cutting out, but like on a budget here. So this time I thought I'd do a bit of a creation story while I'm cutting things up and making this. So gonna go to the other side of the world and go for Aborigine, because why not? And it's kind of awesome because there's so many, but at the same time they are all very similar. So again, ingredients are going to be in the description box, including for my Italian seasoning just here, because I made it because, well, if you've seen any of my other videos, I do kind of have a bit of a pantry going on, and I do tend to reuse my coffee jars quite a lot. But if you buy some Italian seasoning, you'll notice in England we seem to really only do the herby Italian seasoning. That has also got garlic in and a little bit of chilli. I'll explain this in the description box as well. So it's just add a tiny little pinch of chilli, and I mean tiny little pinch of chilli, and extra garlic, which is no biggie. So start off, and yes, this does look absolutely huge because this is like a 6 or 6.5 litre slow cooker. I do have a smaller one, but it's only a 1.5 litre, which is no good for this dish. And again, I'm using frozen because I didn't actually think ahead and get meat out of the freezer last night. So getting on to the story, as I'm cutting up my peppers. Right. In the beginning, there was nothing, like literally nothing. The world did not exist. Nothing existed. It was just a giant, great big void. And then the ancestors made everything. Literally, absolutely everything. They made the plants, the trees, the seas, the rivers, the watering holes. They made man and woman. They even made the rules for how to share food, how to propagate food, and how to, well, how to keep civilization as the Aborigines know it going. Now here's the thing. When it's pale and pasty, think of ancestors, we always seem to think of humans. But the ancestors, depending on where you are, depends on what they are when it comes to the Aborigine Pantheon of gods. Now I'm going to start saying Pantheon quite a lot, which to anybody who's done any form of like D&D or role playing is going to make it sound like I'm talking about levelling up or something like that, or rolling a d6 or a d20. It just means a lot of. In some traditions, the ancestors are giant snakes. In others, they're animal spirits. I forgot to have a look at that. In others, they're things called wanajingas. I'm sorry, again, slaughtered it. I've got a baby one in here. Ooh. So they are different things depending on where you are. And I quite like that, because to me it shows, if their creation story is all the same and yet a little bit different, it does show, bearing in mind we're talking how massive Australia is, it shows not only uniformity but also diversity. And you sit there and have a look at similar sized areas of land in Europe, the Middle East, Africa, the Orient. We don't manage that uniformity. We always think that one is better than the other. And in Australia, they all manage different ancestors but all manage the same story, which I think is actually really quite cool, because we just think that we're better, because we have, you know, our God is better, our way is better. And over there, I'm sure there were arguments over whose was better, but they didn't sit there and mess about with their creation story just because snakes are better than animal spirits or wajingas. And I am probably saying that horrifically wrong, by the way. I am sorry. Usual disclaimer. I am sorry. So what they did was these spirits, they came together, they made the world, and they made it a beautiful place, and they gave the humans that they made rules to follow. And the thing is, they, like I say, they even gave them rules on how to share the food between themselves, how to get married, how to stay married, how to grow foods, how to keep their livestock. I do tend to add celery to absolutely everything because I like the fact that it gives nice texture, but I don't like doing it in massive great big bits, simply because it can be a bit overpowering if you get a particularly large bit. Right. So what happened to these ancestors? Well, once they'd made the world and they had told the humans what they needed to do to keep the world running, a happy place, a healthy place, everybody doing their part, they didn't disappear. What they did was they changed, most of them. Some of them disappeared from sight. So they're still there, going about, doing their daily thing, but they're just invisible to the human eye. So I actually quite like that. They're still there. They're just, you know, every time you look around you think you've seen something. That could be your God. Others became celestial bodies. They literally went into the sky and became the stars. I think I'll take you off as well. By the way, any vegetables that I waste that go into that little pot there go out and become compost, because big on growing stuff. Others became natural forces like the wind, the rain, thunder and lightning, which actually is quite common in a fair few religions. Not that gods disappeared and became thunder and lightning, but we do tend to attribute thunder and lightning and floods and things like that to gods. So that is quite a common one. And others moved into places like trees and rock crevices, pouring in some tomatoes. This here is beef broth. It's about 500 ml of beef broth, which totally absolutely sinks absolutely everything, because remember it's going to go with pasta, which is going to carry on soaking up even when it's cooked. And about a tablespoon's worth of tomato paste. If you notice it becoming dry, or you think it's not tomato enough for you, add passata. Now, I like this story. This story is around about 65,000 years old, allegedly. Right, I'm putting a big lot of Italian seasoning in here. It's a teaspoon, putting a big lot in, heap teaspoon. Now, this is garlic powder. You can use garlic granules. However, one thing I will say is, I also like these. These are garlic stock cubes. As you may notice from the packet, not in English, so you're not going to pick these up in Tesco. If you can find some, they also come in onion and parsley. Get them. You get 10 in a packet. They are fairly cheap and they are very handy, because when something says garlic powder, one of these is about 1 teaspoon, I think, like 1 heaped teaspoon of whatever it says it is, and it adds all the flavour, and it's handy to have. You don't, because I use a lot of garlic powder, it makes sense for me to buy like a 500 gram bag of garlic powder from somewhere. Not everybody gets through that, so having stock cubes is a handy alternative. Hang on, I've forgotten my spoon. I did actually forget something. Look at that. So, this is a very old story, and I have to say, it's going to sound very strange here, but the thing that I like about this story is it links in to an old creation story that I once heard. Now, getting back to this again, I put it on high to begin with. I always put it on high for an hour, so you make it, then you go about your morning routine. I'm going to put that up a bit. Go about your morning routine, get ready, and just as you're about to leave the house, put it on to low, and then just leave it on low. If you're doing a 12-hour shift, what I would suggest is more water in there, because even in one of these, because it's not airtight, liquid is going to go down over the day. If you're doing an 8-hour shift, the 500 ml should be fine, but up it to probably 700 if you're doing a 12-hour shift. Right, back to the creation story. This should be a quick one, by the way. I once heard a creation story that I absolutely loved, but again, I sound like I'm going to be Christian bashing here, so it is a warning. All the gods got together from every religion, and they made a planet, or they found a planet, and they decided they were going to all create their own people for the planet. They all got a patch of land, and in that patch of land they created their own humans with their own plants, their own animals, their own waterways, their own customs, their own tribes, their own rocks, their own everything. And the rule was that they would all live together and they would all be a part of the world together, and nobody would discount anybody else, which sounds awesome, doesn't it? But one of the gods decided to go against all the other gods and build a wall around his land. Does that sound familiar to anyone? And because of that, all of the other gods took offence, and so humanity has forever been warming. Now this is technically backed up in the Bible. Amongst other religions, if you look in older texts of religions, some of them do have stories of a joint creation story. And then as you get into more modern stories, it goes to a singular God creation story. But when Lilith was kicked out of the Garden of Eden, she was forced to live with the other people. Who are those other people? Because if God had only made Adam, and I think Lilith was about the third wife, but the other two had basically died of deformities, because Eve was like the seventh wife. Who were these other people that Lilith had been kicked out to? Unless multiple gods had got together to make the world. And it sticks up to scrutiny. Obviously, looking at it in a scientific standpoint, it doesn't. But in a religious standpoint, it does. There is it's technically, I think, two rivers that converge. Is it in the Amazon? I know it's South America. One is salt water, one is clear water, and they converge, and one I think is like blacky brown and one is blue, and you can see the waters don't mix together because they're different waters of different consistencies and different salinities, and then I think they join almost immediately with the sea, so you end up with 3 different colours of water, and they're all different. It's very strange. If I can find a photo, I will try and see or a link or something like that, I will see if I can put that in the description, even if it's not when this is loaded up. I will see if I can put it in the description box in future, because I don't know how to forward you all to a photo, but there might be something on YouTube, so that would be easier to link you to. And yeah, I just think that's amazing, because there's little things. I remember reading about it and getting told about it when I was like in primary school, and then I think it was my Jewish teacher. There was only one Jewish teacher. She was lovely. One Passover, she was off for Passover, and she came back with flatbread for us all to try. I forgot what it's called, but it's a type of flatbread for us all to try that is traditionally made and eaten for Passover. She only had a little bit. Because she'd made loads for the family, any that was left she brought into school for us to try, which I thought was awesome. But she told me that creation story, and then I was like, that is pretty cool. And then a Hindu friend of mine at school, she asked her grandma about it, as you do when you're a child, and she said she remembered being told the same thing back in India, that all the gods had got together to make the planet. But she'd never seen it written in any holy text. And we were like, that's strange, that is. And then when I was older, I started looking it up, and in more and more books, like holy books that are older, there were hints that all the gods had got together and made the world, but one of them decided to rebel. Even in the Bible itself, with Lilith going out to live with the other people, banished to live with the other people. So you sit there and then you go, what? Now, that God's working together as a community to make the world as it is and make the people and make them live together as a community, that to me stands strong in the Aboriginal creation story, because the gods are making their own people with their own practices, their own customs, their own cultures on their own lands, because each god made each tract of land for their own people with their own customs and their own practices, but not as not in competition with each other, which, if you have a look at modern religion, we're all in competition with each other, which is where all the problems lie. And I'm sitting there going, that really does remind me of that. And then you think about how far apart Australia was from the rest of the world for how long, and you sit there and go, yeah, that kind of tags in with that old story you were told as a child. I know, it sounds silly, doesn't it? But you just sit there and go, it's awesome when something like, because you know, from a scientific standpoint, it's all hooey. But when things like that, little bits of myths are true, it kind of warms your heart a bit, doesn't it? It's a bit like Noah's Ark. You know the fact that Noah's Ark is a myth, but at the same time, Noah's Ark, the story, shows up in at least 8 cultures, going everywhere from northern India, at least, because I know it shows up in Hindu texts, so it must have been northern India at least, all the way through to Europe, because it was in Greece at least. And you're sitting there going, so we know the flood happened, and in most of the flood stories there is a tale about a bloke with a boat with animals on it. So how did that all happen? And we know for a fact that he could not have got 2 of each animal on a boat to live happily together for 40 days and 40 nights, but all the stories say that it happened. You know, and over such a large tract of the Earth's crust, people say it rained for 40 days and 40 nights, there or thereabouts, and there was a bloke wandering around on this floodplain with a boat with loads of animals on. You know, it's just when the stories, and there is actually physical proof of this flood, by the way. So it's when the stories match up with, you know, multiple stories from multiple cultures or faiths all match up. I just think it's awesome. I really do. Which is part of the reason why I keep doing this, because I'm a bit sad, and I like the fact that through our histories, we can all get back together to not exactly being best buddies, but maybe getting on a bit better again, because that would be pretty cool, really, wouldn't it? Right, I'm leaving that to cook. I'll put it all in the description what to do. And yeah, I'm not using that second celery. I think that'll be too much celery, really. So that's going back in my fridge, by the way, not in the rock plot. That's what I call my compost heap rock plot. So yeah, when it's cooked, boil some pasta. Most people say slightly underboil it, like al dente type, and then mix it in. And it's also good with cheese on. Or have that on top of the pasta, but I tend to mix it in. It's awesome. Right then, have fun. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. I know your power. Bye.